I hope you
Yeah.
don't. I hope you don't really think that this is a good point. You're basically saying, well, he can grow other ways, so why would he do that? So what if they assumed that he was a sex pest with no
No,
evidence
not
to
assume.
support it?
Sorry, not.
They
Yeah. So
thought
not.
if there's no
Yeah.
if there's no evidence to support it, then they have to be assuming.
Are you around? And then I posted this. Look, it's the sex pest. And then I blocked him.
My stream is open. If y'all niggas are really about that smoke, we can have a conversation on or off stream.
All right. I think we are good to go.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you for being willing to have this conversation, and
No worries.
being one of those people willing to voice your opinion on the matter that happened. So obviously, just to fill everyone else in, basically, there was a person that was that had a relationship, a friendship with one of the larger content creator PrimeCayes, and I guess shortly, eventually relationship, I guess PrimeCayes made romantic advancements towards the individual, which I guess she claims that she was never interested in and never reciprocated. And then I guess they started. Eventually, they developed a working relationship. And very recently, there was a long TwitLonger in which there were accusations made against this creator, in which she said that he had sexually harassed her. And so there was a big conversation that happened through Dylan Burns' stream, and I think you also had a debate with Destiny on it, or a conversation with Destiny on it.
Yeah, I'm in the bathroom, so I don't wake up now.
You're a fucking legend, bro. You're like the fucking Johnny Cochran of Twitch politics, bro.
And the thing is, for me, it seems like now, because this was all yesterday, it seems like already there's been a pretty decently sized redress of, I guess, some of the accusations from some of the key figures involved.
For sure, yeah.
So where do you stand on everything as it is now?
I think my initial position I think still holds. I still hold my initial position. My initial position was not that Prime should be canceled or anything like that. What generally when people make accusations, I'm less interested in the specific label itself and more interested in actually like analyzing the thing itself. And from that night, I said like, in my opinion, what Prime did was still inappropriate. But I never said like he should, be canceled or anything like that. And I still hold that position.
Okay, I hear that. Now
They need me.
Dylan Burns and
Need what I can do.
you guys have a bit of a, I guess, a working relationship. I believe you're a mod on his channel.
So just let me just clarify that. So I'm a mod on his channel just because like when he initially started streaming, he needed like mods. They got like 1,000 viewers one night when he was still like 100 viewer streamer, and they just basically called in whoever could come through. I'm not like an active mod. I don't watch his stream all the time, but we do have we just started a podcast together. And we've had like one episode. The second episode was supposed to be Tuesday night when all this shit went down. So
I see.
but yeah, I would say we have a working relationship for sure, no doubt.
Okay. There while he was talking to Destiny, at one point he brought on Hans of Akir, and you kind of expressed disappointment in that it seemed like you kind of expected at that point for him to be bringing you into the call, right?
Oh no, I didn't have any expectation because I didn't know this was going down. I just felt like I could have done a better job bridging the gap between Destiny and Dylan. In a way that I think I did as well.
You literally
After when I
But you made the statement like, "Whoa, am I getting boxed out? Like, why not me?"
I was mostly just joking, but I'll be straight up with you. There was no plan to like bring me in at all whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now your position, it does sound like it's significantly more neutral than that of Dylan Burns. Because it sounds
For sure, yeah.
like Dylan Burns was more interested or somewhat expecting for Prime to be canceled. Same with Katarana, same with Hans of Akira originally, right?
I can concede that. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I think it's respectable that your position was a lot more neutral, but I would think that
For sure.
I guess maybe juxtaposing your position directly against Dylan Burns, It seems like because of the working relationship, maybe I made the unfair assumption that it sounded like you were also in favor of moving in that direction. But I'm glad now that you're very much
Oh,
clearly stating the exact opposite, that it was not that you were doing, that you wanted him to be canceled. You did feel
oh,
that he acted
absolutely not.
inappropriate, but
Yeah, absolutely not. So if you listen to my conversation with Destiny,
mhm,
you'll see I even said like Dylan shouldn't have titled it sexual harassment, like misconduct or inappropriate behavior. Any of those things probably would have been a much more accurate title. And I said probably if they'd handled it off stream, that probably would have been more productive as well. So like it's not like I'm afraid to criticize Dylan. I
mhm.
told him these things in private as well.
Nice, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
So now that there's been this redress, where do you stand on that? What are your feelings on the redress? Have you had a redress? Well, you said your opinion has pretty much been immutable, I guess, in the sense
So
that.
my so okay, here's the thing. Okay, so I understand that like this whole Samantha situation was a bit of a debacle. I understand the that like maybe things were not handled as they should have been, perhaps. And I totally get that. But the thing is, I still think that like while there could be no evidence, not no, but there could be insufficient evidence of the sexual harassment, let's say,
Mhm.
but a person could still feel like they experienced that. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, but I
So
think.
I don't like to discount Katarana's feelings. I think it's yeah, that's my point.
But that's not what I'm doing here. I think that you can absolutely, a person can feel any way they want to.
Yeah,
But at the end of,
exactly. Yeah,
but we have to recognize that when we're starting to use these feelings, or we're trying to consider how we should evaluate a certain outcome that's expected for an individual, that we probably should be looking beyond the feelings of an individual and try to look for material facts in order for us to be able to be completely supportive of the person. Now I can support.
ideally, yes, of
You're right.
course.
Now,
Yeah.
I can support an individual as far as deciding, like, hey, I'm going to be a friend. I'm going to be a listening ear. I'm going to be, I'm going to stand by you, whatever. I can do those things. But if I'm trying to make an assessment for actions that should be taken or labels that should be applied to another individual, then I probably would need to go far beyond the feelings. And we also recognize that sometimes some people's feelings can be unfounded. They can be unwarranted. They can be misguided.
Hmm.
We're fully aware of that. And so then
Of
when
course.
looking through the conversations that were had, it seemed to me that once we got more sides, once we started listening to PrimeCayes actually giving some of the nuance around the text messages that had been given, sometimes literally immediately preceding messages that sort of painted the text message, that gave better context, that seemed to somewhat exonerate him. Were you able to catch PrimeCayes'
Yeah, I
defense?
watched it that night as well, his stream. And like so I don't disagree with you that you would ideally have to have what do you call it? All the evidence, right?
Hmm.
But in Dylan and Katarana's defense, like, don't you think that they assumed that their evidence was sufficient before coming forward with this? Like, they're not going to come and make themselves look bad on purpose, right?
Well, sure, that's one take on it. It's possible that they assumed that their evidence was
No,
sufficient.
I
As
think.
far, wait, hold on,
Wait, but
wait.
why? Wait, sorry,
If I
but
can respond,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I think that's one possibility. I also think that maybe they were reaching a little bit because there might have been some motivation potentially there. I mean, that's also a possibility.
But why would they risk looking bad if they didn't have all of the evidence? Like, look at look at how this is backfired, kind of, right? Like,
Has it
why would they
backfired?
do that? Yeah, I think so.
Explain to me that what's been the extent of the backfiring?
Well, the backfire is that when they came out with these allegations, I don't think that they thought that anyone was going to look at them as the the people that you know acted in bad faith or whatever people like. I thought I think that like I ran a poll on my Twitter. Let me pull up the poll right now. Actually, I ran a poll on my Twitter. I'll
Link
tell
that
you
to
the
me,
result.
please.
Yeah, I would love to. I said okay, here. I said, so this was from yesterday. Got 563 votes. You can take of that what you will. I have a pretty diverse audience, I think. I said, so do you all think that what Destiny did last night was appropriate, but though harsh, or completely out of line?
Hmm.
And most 57% of people said that it was appropriate, though harsh. and 42% of people said it was completely out of line. So if it was the case that the public opinion was so much in favor of Dylan and Katarana, I don't think that people would have been way worse to Destiny, where they would have said you're victim blaming or you're all this other thing. But 57%.
42% of people still said he was victim blaming. But I don't think I'm necessarily so concerned about whether or not what Destiny did was appropriate. I'm looking for the information because it sounded like you were implying in some sort of way that there was some sort of fallout that was happening to Dylan Burns and Katarana, to which I don't believe there's any. Do you have any?
Wait,
evidence
sorry,
of any of that?
you haven't. Yeah, you haven't seen people saying Dylan played this up. Fuck Katarana. Go look at Katarana did a post today. You can go look at the comments underneath. Everyone's like talking shit about her, saying "fuck you." Da, 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 da. Destiny said, "Do we have evidence of the fact that Katarana has narcissistic personality disorder?" Da, 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 da. Like, I think that a lot of people are anti Dylan and Katarana now. Whereas, like, I really don't think that their initial starting position was that of like, hey, there's a chance that this might fuck us up.
Sure. I would imagine that they went forward with the belief that what they were going to do
Exactly.
was going to be supported by everyone. But I think
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think there's a mixed bag. I saw plenty of messages where people were literally criticizing the individuals that were talking against Katarana in any capacity. I saw so many people calling Destiny a victim blamer. You obviously said 42% of people in your poll literally said that that Destiny was completely
Well, of course. I
inappropriate.
mean,
So
yeah.
and again, it seems like my question would be, is there literally anything tangential or anything quantifiable to demonstrate any sort of fallout? Or are you saying just literally the only fallout, the furthest extent of that is just a few tweet messages?
Well, I think in general, when people come out with sexual harassment allegations, they get like overwhelming support. Would you say that's fair?
Sure. Hold
Yeah.
on.
So in this case,
But you
yeah,
understand that not overwhelming support is not the same thing as fallout. Like what you can be neutral instead of
sorry.
supporting. But
Okay.
you mentioned falling out, so I need to see something moving within the opposite direction.
Okay, gotcha. So I think that initially when the allegations started with the Samantha Banana call, before the Destiny involvement, I think that like a lot of people were saying like or supportive of Katarana's position and Dylan's position. Do you agree?
Sure.
So I'm talking about the people who've been swayed away from that. Like,
To
I
neutral.
think that to like defending Prime. Like, man, you don't know how many people I've seen today. Like, thank God Prime's career has been saved. Which, like, I agree. Okay, I'm just saying, like, I don't think that a lot of these people would have this position if it weren't for the way that everything played out.
I think we're missing something here. Let me see if I put it in number form, right? Obviously, we know 0 is neutral. Let's look at it like a timeline or a number line of some sort, right? So maybe if she came forward with these accusations and the accusations are worth 100, right? So then everyone, if they support it, there's like 100 support for it, right? But then, of course, Destiny comes in the thing and then makes everyone at neutral. It's like, that's fine. Okay, so now no one's supporting it for it. We're back at neutral. You made the claim, it sounded like, that people were more moving towards the negative, to where they actually had unfavorable opinions of Dylan Burns and Katarana, to which I said I didn't believe there was any evidence. Do you have any evidence? Like, I'm sorry, beyond just a few Twitter posts in which people were making statements like that? Because even the poll that you presented did not present something as far as like something, it wasn't something that was crazily binary. It was actually, one was Destiny was bad, the other one is maybe he was kind of harsh, right? I'm sorry, not bad, but somewhat harsh.
One was harsh but appropriate. The other one was completely out of line.
Harsh but appropriate could still be neutral, and especially when you only give two options here, in which one of them is completely negative, then the other.
So what would have been the appropriate? What would have been the appropriate third option for you?
What Destiny did was 100% right.
Well, that would fall in the first category, no?
I don't know. I feel like when you only leave these two options and people don't feel that it's harsh, then that means that a bunch of neutral parties would also probably pick the other one, because the negative one is significantly more charged, right?
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But,
wait, hold on. Really quickly. Let me just make sure this is crystal clear.
Yeah, repeat it again, maybe. Yeah,
right. Yeah, because that's crazy. The negative is very clearly charged. So then that means people who identify with the negative, have a charged opinion, a charged affirmative opinion in their belief, right? Whereas if their only options in this poll, which is not expressed in some
I have another.
crazy dichotomy, then that means now people who don't feel necessarily with the negative charge, but also feel neutral, because negative charge is a commitment, then the other one seems like it could be a lot more non-committal. So some of the
So you're
neutral-based
saying
people would probably be more likely to pick that other option as opposed to the negative one.
okay. So one sec. So what you're saying is, if someone thought that Destiny was completely in the right, but that option wasn't presented, that they would pick that he was completely out of line.
No. Wow. I'm saying any person who doesn't look at it, I'm saying a neutral person
Might scroll by.
would clearly not choose the negative, but since the negative and this other option were the only ones, then they would probably choose the other one, even though they weren't necessarily positive, but just because they were neutral, because they feel very obviously because the other position is significantly more non-committal than the negative charge associated with the inappropriate.
Okay. Can I read you another poll I got from my YouTube channel? I
Yes.
posted. It has 150 votes. Maybe you'll like this wording a little bit better.
Hopefully.
I said Dylan and Katarana made accusations about PrimeCayes displaying some troubling behavior. Destiny jumped in to defend Prime and was very assertive with his defense. And then I said, if you got the drama, I'm wondering which side you fall on. Okay. And the wording is Prime and Destiny's side, Dylan and Katarana's side. Both sides handled some aspects poorly, and other. And then I said discuss in the comments.
And I bet
Is that
you
better wording?
it could be possibly. Sure,
Okay.
sure. And I would imagine the vast majority of those are both sides.
Yeah. 50% say both sides handled some aspects poorly.
I'm not psychic. I'm just observant. So the vast
Yeah.
majority of people are still neutral in this problem. So that's what I was getting at.
Okay, well, one sec.
I'm not psychic. I'm just observant.
So the other ones, which is Dylan and Prime's side, or sorry, Dylan and Katarana's side, or Prime and Destiny's side. Prime and Destiny's side has 28%, and Dylan and Katarana's side has 14%.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's still, and the other thing I want to point out, when I say both sides handled some aspects poorly, I still hold that position. I still think that what Prime did is inappropriate behavior with people in the space.
Okay, so here we can get into some of that, but my main point was that it didn't seem like there was any significant negative fallout for Katarana or Dylan. It sounded like Destiny wasn't even really advocating for anything like that, when the contrary was actually true, and I think that's where my problem comes in. It seems like most of the time when people come forward with accusations on this magnitude, the idea that okay, when someone comes with a false accusation, that instead now, when we had intentions of doing something entirely negative to another person's livelihood and their life, when we have those intentions, and then it's discovered that the person may have lied or misconstrued, or that our assessment was off base, such that we needed redress, then I think the idea that we can then just go back to neutral, I think, is unfounded. I feel like having paid attention to the conversation, I felt like it was pretty obvious to me that the vast majority, that again, Dylan Burns and Katarana very clearly had intentions for very negative things to happen towards Prime's livelihood. And I think the fact that they had those feelings and they painted the picture in a specific way, I think is where I have a problem for us to be able to go back to neutral.
Okay, so I would ask you a question, and I appreciate what you said. That made sense. I followed. I would ask you. Let's say that Katarana and Dylan really and truly felt like that Prime was a sexual harasser. Okay,
A sex pest.
Sex pest. Sure.
Are you around? And then I posted this.
Let's say they actually genuinely thought that because of some voice calls or something that, like, it has to be the voice calls, right? Those are the things that aren't recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that their anger, if that was the case, if Katarana really truly was her, if Dylan was truly upset, whatever, that they would then come forward with this?
So what you're basically saying is, let's assume that what PrimeCayes did was wrong, for which we have no evidence. But let's assume that they did have the evidence. Then would it be okay for them to come forward? Yes.
No, sorry, no. They don't have the evidence. I'm saying, because obviously they don't have the voice calls. But I'm saying, like, let's say that they thought that the evidence was sufficient, but we know it's not, right?
Right.
But they thought it was, and also they were very upset because they think that he is a sex pest.
Right. So what? So what if they assumed that he was a sex pest with no evidence
No, not
to support
assume.
it?
Sorry, not.
They
Yeah,
thought
so not.
if there's no
Yeah,
if there's no evidence to support it, then they have to be assuming.
no, because they could have witnessed it, right? That's the conclusion that they've made from all the various actions that he's done.
So wait,
But they don't have the voiced call recorded to be the smoking gun evidence that we all now they didn't have.
so wait, they witnessed it? Because Dylan Burns, to my knowledge, wasn't present for any of the voice. I'm sorry, he was present for a single voice call.
Sorry, I don't know. Sorry, just Katarana. Like,
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
would Katarana have the ability to come forward if she didn't record any of these phone calls, but she did indeed experience sexual harassment? Absolutely.
Yeah.
The problem
Yeah.
comes when someone comes forward like Dylan Burns and is literally talking about tanking a man's career when he has no corroborating evidence. Any person can come forward and voice whatever they feel genuinely happened to them. And we have to approach those things with good faith and assume that the individual coming forward genuinely believes those things. However, when you get into a situation in which you're now having your voice amplified by the other person's rival, and that person doesn't have any evidence and is making insane amounts of claims, and we see all of this other nonsense, that's where you start running into a problem here. And that's what happened in this case with the Dylan Burns.
But so I agree with the things that you've said, but what I'm saying is obviously when they dropped these allegations, in their eyes they had the evidence they needed, and Katarana's feelings were addressed by Dylan. So he's like, I'm gonna bring this up. No,
Okay, if they
yeah,
believed that, because again, you're now making you're assuming that they genuinely
yeah. I mean,
believe
I'm
that.
not in
But
their
I
brain,
don't know
right? Like, I don't
exactly. We
know.
don't know that. So
Yeah,
all we can
yeah,
do,
exactly.
so all we can do is really assess based off of whether or not Dylan Burns had actual evidence, which apparently now we very, very clearly see he didn't, to actually support what he was saying, or whether or not he had other motivations that made his bias kick in, such that he was willing to go forward with what he thought was really a
Could-
nuke, but turned out to be a dud, hoping to
Okay.
nuke someone's career.
Do you think that if now we know that it's his girlfriend, I guess, like we didn't know this before.
Yeah, because
Do
he
you think that
originally
his
lied about that, didn't he?
If we were to prove that he was lying, though, wouldn't that hurt his credibility?
I'm going to flip this back on you. As you just made the argument to me, wouldn't this example of PrimeCayes dishonesty, if we accepted that it was dishonesty, fit into a pattern of behavior or whatever, I could make the exact same criticism of the way that you lied about whether or not you were dating Katarina, right?
I didn't lie about it, though. When I was asked,
You said not right now.
Oh, that is true. Okay, that's fair.
We're friends with Dylan. Wait, do you guys have like a romantic relationship or anything? Is that?
At the moment, no.
Wait, what does that mean?
I mean, maybe it'll become romantic later. What does that mean? What do you mean?
Wait. Okay, hold on. Okay, we'll put all that aside. Okay.
Sure, and that's valid. Do you think that this what do you call it? Fuck, what was I gonna say? Oh, maybe that like if his girlfriend is genuinely thinks that she has been sexually harassed, but she's on voice calls or something, that he's like, okay, I'm gonna defend you. Like, fuck this Prime guy. He sexually harassed my girlfriend. Like, that could be the other motive behind it.
Right. So because he was biased, because it was his
Yeah.
girlfriend, he was
Exactly,
willing,
yeah.
he was willing to come forward with a groundless accusation and
I
try
mean,
to, try to torpedo someone's career.
You're
I'm
saying
sorry.
it's
I'm
groundless.
speaking from a place of reality because he clearly presented as much evidence as he could. He literally asked for every piece of evidence. Now, after we've assessed the evidence, it seems like even the people who were close to the issue were clearly willing to redress because they recognized the evidence didn't really exist. There was literally no smoking guns, and he made so many appeals towards evidence every time someone speculated that he had motivated reasoning, or that he had his bias, that he had his bias or his motivated reasoning for trying to nuke PrimeCayes. So it's not that he's unfamiliar with the need for evidence before coming forward with accusations, because he literally appealed to that every single time anyone ever speculated about his involvement in this situation, which it looked obvious to everyone else. But he kept on trying to hint at the elephant in the room. So if he's aware of the need for evidence in this scenario, but when it came to trying to torpedo PrimeCayes, his rival's career, the idea that he can completely suspend this need for evidence in that case seemed a little bit ridiculous, especially, and by the way, it's really hard for me to grant that this man truly believed that his girlfriend was sexually harassed while he's literally making light of the situation, joking the entire time.
I think he actually used the word dump truck, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he used the word dump truck.
Does he work in construction?
No, he doesn't work in construction.
Refugee program for Prime's community. Yeah, I gotta say, Prime actually collapsed faster than the Afghanistan government. So if there's any refugee program we need on top of taking Afghan refugees, it's taking Prime community refugees. So we will start a program and welcome any of them into either Cat or my community. 100%.
All of that, no, it does not sound like, it doesn't sound like it was something that he was taking completely serious. He was literally laughing 90% of the time when he was talking about it, as was she.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think that Dylan would purposely make himself look bad?
I don't believe that he thought he would look bad because
Exactly.
right. Because he obviously, especially, we recognize with the Me Too movement and the way people react in a lot of these situations, even sometimes when we don't have evidence, people are much more willing, especially right now in today's political climate, especially with the online leftist community that is Twitch, the idea that people were going to push back really heavily about this situation is really, really, that's spurious. We know in the vast majority of cases that's not what's going to happen. It literally, I believe, like, had it not been for someone who's pretty much as uncancelable as Destiny, like actually speaking up against this, no one would have felt comfortable to come forward. Everyone would have just gotten on board. Everyone would be on the gas. Nobody's on the brakes. Everyone amplifying the situation, asking for PrimeCayes' head. That's exactly the way he expected it to play out, because that's the way I expected it to play out, even though at that point I felt like, man, there's not any really solid evidence. But that doesn't matter to Twitch's eyes. I know you know this. I know this. And anyone listening to this conversation is very well aware that that evidence is not essential when it comes to the cancellation of individuals. Literally only testimony, and we had actual testimony from the individual right there, and I'm pretty sure Dylan Burns thought that that was enough, so that's why he was willing to come forward with this thing. It's not about whether or not he thought it's not about, no, he would not do anything where he thought he would look bad, but given the current climate and the way that these situations are typically handled, he felt pretty strongly, as I did too, that this was probably just going to result in the cancellation in Prime, and so he didn't have to worry about thinking defensively about how the fallout would be. In fact, he would look significantly more valiant as being the person who came forward with these accusations, especially if he doesn't have any added motivations, which is what motivated him to lie about the fact that he had been dating Katarana for months.
Can I ask you a question?
You can
do
ask
you
me all the
think
questions.
that-
You don't have to ask me a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you think that like, who can you give me like an example of someone who was recently canceled without sufficient evidence? Like the last person in this space, at least that I can think of, that kind of was under this kind of heat was Chud Logic. Do you consider him canceled? Like, I think a lot of people in are now like want to see the evidence. I think no.
I don't know who Chud Logic is, and I didn't follow that situation.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, anyways, so then, can you think of any people who like when there's DMs or whatever available that like these things aren't scrutinized ultra closely? I feel like that's a very common thing now.
Well, I think there's plenty of cases where we ended up canceling people without any real significant evidence. I think Kevin Spacey is a perfect example of that. I would say, I think Kevin Spacey. I'll just stick to that one. Kevin Spacey is an example where we didn't have any actual evidence. All we had was a testimony of the individuals, but it sounded like the testimony was credible, and then his absolute piss poor response to the situation led to his cancellation. Sometimes we don't need actual forensic evidence when we're trying to look towards conviction or towards forming public opinion, and especially in cases, especially when it comes to sexual assault, as I've had extensive conversation with people in this Twitch space, we're all very well aware that in the vast majority of sexual assault cases or sexual harassment or any form of whatever, it's cases of a sexual nature, very often it's very difficult, if not impossible, to come into contact with forensic evidence. So more often than not, the only thing that we can do, we've seen a rise in the Me Too movement, the only thing that we can do is go off of the testimonies of the individuals. We saw Michael Jackson canceled by various people with literally no evidence. Kevin Spacey was canceled by various people with little to no evidence. We obviously had Bill Cosby, who was canceled with literally no evidence. So all of these things, we all recognize the Me Too movement is real. And part of one of the talking points, the major talking points of the Me Too movement is specifically that people recognize that we don't have evidence often when it comes to sexual harassment case, but we still should believe women. So this happens on a regular basis. And again, on Twitch, we know how quick people are to jump to conclusion. This is not something that's unfounded.
Wait, sorry. But you can't point to any examples of anybody that this has happened to on Twitch.
On Twitch, well, obviously we had that one person who was canceled for literally stating there was only 2 genders. I can't remember her name. I'm awful with names. Um,
That's not the same as like a sexual harassment thing, right?
sure,
That's like a
all I'm going,
transphobic
sure,
scandal, totally different
but
situation. But yeah,
but
like yeah, if you could point to anybody who was
do
like
you
unjustly,
that I don't
yeah.
one, I don't believe that that's transphobic. 2, I believe that surely shouldn't be cancelable. And 3,
Okay, that's a different story though,
it
right?
is a
Like
different
we can have
story.
a whole,
You asked me
yeah,
for
yeah.
different stories. There are the thing
No,
is,
I asked for this story,
if you're
right?
asking for a
Sexual harassment.
specific story
Sexual
about,
harassment.
so the conversation that I was having was specifically about the idea that we understand that the left in general, when it comes to the stories of sexual harassment, I feel like I plainly laid out to you that oftentimes these people are canceled. I've plainly laid that out to
Where?
you.
Who? Wait, Kevin
I
Spacey.
Kevin
and
Spacey,
Kevin,
Bill
okay,
Cosby,
let me. Can I talk? Kevin Spacey has had multiple allegations
witnesses.
over decades.
Well,
Of his behavior,
so there
and same
weren't
with
there
Bill
weren't
Cosby.
there weren't
There's been
there weren't there
sorry,
weren't there
can I
were
talk?
there,
Can I talk?
hold on, there were not any,
Wait.
hold on, we don't have to get lost in the woods of all of these individuals. The fact of the matter is, if you're trying to make are you making the argument to me right now that people on the left aren't hyper reactive when it comes to sexual assault, and that there hasn't been a gigantic shift when it comes to the Me Too movement with the idea of canceling people without evidence? If you're willing to make that statement, I don't want to get lost in the weeds here. We can just move on.
Okay, so my point is, regardless of what people try to do, we have to look at what the end evidence is. I tried to dunk a basketball, but can I? No, I can't.
Kevin Spacey literally lost one of his shows, which was literally one of the most successful shows. We saw that. So, like, what are you talking about?
I asked, well, we're talking about Twitch. And also, Kevin Spacey has had decades of allegations against him. Decades. Literally documented.
The
Same
vast
with
majority
Bill
of those
Cosby.
accusations
in the
were
90s,
not
bro,
public.
in the 90s, there was accusations in the newspapers of Bill Cosby date raping women. Literally in the 90s.
Okay, we can have a Cosby litigation later if you would like to. We've obviously recognized Andrew Cuomo, there's literally no evidence besides the testimony of the individuals. We recognize that without forensic evidence, very often people are willing to cancel people in the Me Too movement. If you're trying,
No one canceled.
great. So if no one canceled, oh, okay.
You want to talk about Cuomo?
No, we don't have to go very deep into this.
Because
what I'm saying. Okay, so that's why I asked you the very specific statement. And if you're willing to defend that statement, we don't have to get lost in the mud here. I know that you know better, so I'm asking this very simply. Do you believe that the left is willing to cancel people for sexual assault or cases of a sexual nature without forensic evidence? Do you believe that to be true?
Do I believe that people try to cancel people sometimes without enough evidence?
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I'm going to state it again.
One more time.
Do you believe that people are willing to cancel people for cases of a sexual nature on the left without forensic evidence?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and that's why I feel, based on that, Dylan Burns would reasonably expect, even though there is no forensic evidence, that the implication in these non-smoking gun text messages would be enough. He literally made several appeals to having multiple opponents or multiple people willing to testify several times. So he clearly said, well, we have Samantha Banana, well, we have other witnesses. They haven't come forward yet, but if need be, I can get them. We have all of this. He literally made the appeal to evidence God knows how many times. I literally documented it. If need be, I can do a control F.
Can I just
go ahead?
Can I just because like you're saying a bunch of things, I want to push back right away. So what you said is so let's go back one step, right? So you initially said, do I think that people think that they can cancel people without enough evidence?
You already agreed to that.
Yeah, that was I'm just getting on the same page. That was what the initial point was, right? Okay. So the second thing is but you can't point to many examples of it actually taking place. Why would Dylan go through with this?
Because at this point, so what we were trying to express right now was that did Dylan have a reasonable expectation of negative fallout? So if people try to cancel people on the left, even when they don't have forensic evidence, when you have the testimony of the individual in question and you have other people that you believe will also make these claims in this highly politicized team sport that is canceling PrimeCayes, then I think the idea is that I think it's reasonable to assume that Dylan didn't expect there to be negative fallout. If you really, again, if you want to push back on that, then we can just stop that.
I agree that Dylan didn't think he was going to have negative fallout.
Okay,
but the reason that I think, wait one sec, the reason I think that is because he thought he has enough evidence.
You can say that you believe that he thought that he had enough evidence.
Yes, that's all.
Okay, you can say that. I don't think that it's necessarily that he thought that he had enough evidence. I think that he recognizes. Can you show me an example of there being some really significant fallout for any person who has been known to make false accusations ever?
Well, wait. Well, usually no, because the people who
Okay.
make the allegations of sexual assault are usually not besides like the Weinstein one. Usually, it's like people that get sexually harassed are getting sexually harassed by the person in power. So usually, there's a power dynamic at play. You know what I mean?
So
It's
yeah,
usually
so
non-famous people,
right.
so
So it
I
never
don't know
exists.
them by name.
So it never.
I don't know
existed.
them. I don't know them. I think a lot of people with the Aziz Ansari one gave that person who tried to accuse him a lot of shit
But there was
because she didn't
but there was
have
no
enough evidence.
But there was no tangible negative fallout, right?
I don't know what her life like. I don't know what her career is. I
Okay,
have
so,
no
so then
idea.
she doesn't count. Are you aware of any? So it sounds to me like you're willing to admit that you're not aware of a single example ever of someone coming forward with a false accusation and there being any negative fallout for that individual, right?
I can't think of. I
Yeah,
mean,
of
yeah,
course
I
not.
would
You
say
can't think
that
of it
I
'cause
would.
you've never
I
encountered
would
it.
say no, but wait, I just said the Aziz Ansari one. I'm sure she had negative fallout. I just don't know what her career was.
What was the negative fallout?
That everyone railed on her and thought that she was wrong, in the wrong, and that she was trying to grift through this movement.
Okay, so the negative fallout you're saying is just basically that some people said we disagreed with her, or some people like just voiced disrespect or contempt for her on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's what you want to say, the negative fallout of some people.
What should they go? Should they go to jail? Like, what do you want?
But yeah, so that's exactly. We can get into that. I think very often when we have people that are willing to make false accusations about other people, I think that the fallout should be absolutely extreme. Because
Okay, so let me.
I think
I
if
agree
you
with
just
you. I
asked me the
agree.
question, you just asked me the
Wait,
question. If I can,
I want to caveat it. I want to caveat because I agree with you.
Oh my God.
If there was
Okay,
evidence,
if you're not going to let me finish my statement,
No,
then you
but-
can interject here. But I feel like I was going to give a comprehensive answer. But if you really
Bro.
want my answer to be boiled down to two sentences, or I'm sorry, half of a sentence, then go ahead and interject and not let me finish.
Bro, I swear, if we listen to this back, you'll see you've talked way more than me.
For sure, I have.
Okay, so
But it's not because I'm not allowing you to talk.
So what I'm going to say is I agree with you that if there was evidence that someone was making false allegations, like if there was a DM where Katarana and Dylan were like, yo, let's fucking make some shit up and cancel Prime, then yes, 100%, there should be severe fallout for that. But there's a difference between that and just not having sufficient evidence.
Can you explain to me why that needed to interrupt my statement? Actually, I don't want you to. I'll just go ahead and
Because I was
no,
agreeing
it's
with
okay.
you.
Never mind. I don't want you to.
Yeah.
I don't want you to.
Yeah.
I'll just finish
I
my
was
statement that I
agreeing
was going to make. Actually, it's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, the thing is, what I'm saying is, I think that it's incredibly heinous for people to come forward with false accusation. I think it's on par.
I agree.
I think it's on par with the thing that people would originally with it. For example, I think someone intentionally making false accusations about rape, I think are equivalent. I think that is just as heinous as an actual
As
rapist.
what?
As an actual rapist. I think a person lying about sexual molestation is just as heinous as an actual person that would sexually molest a child.
Okay.
And I think it's incredibly dangerous, and I think it's extremely harmful to a movement when you have people that jump onto accusations that are really unfounded. We already recognize that there is a culture, maybe not the main culture on the left, but there is a culture on the right that very much gets behind the idea of victim blaming, of defending people. I've had literal people defending Harvey Weinstein. I've heard of people literally defending R. Kelly. I've had conversations with those sort of imbeciles. So the idea that so when we elevate bad voices in these communities and allow them to make these claims where we know that the fallout for the individuals that the accusations are made about will be grave, and then to just completely brush it off once we start getting more information and nuance and we see the manipulation of information, I think it becomes really problematic. In this specific case, I think the manipulation of information comes at the fact that they intentionally misheld the fact that any of these messages and things happened when they implied that these messages were happening as he worked for her, when he clearly demonstrated through his response and through his text messages that while he was making a plenty of these messages before they developed their working relationship, that those messages stopped once the working relationship started. She withheld that information.
Okay, so two things. I'm going to address your second point, okay? But I just want to ask you a yes or no question. So do you think that there's a difference between not having enough evidence versus false allegations?
Of course, obviously.
Okay. Awesome. Because this seems like the crux of it is that I think that there might just not be enough evidence for them, but they thought that they did have the evidence, and it sounds like you're saying that it was false allegations. That's the first thing. The second thing is when you're saying they implied that this happened when he worked for her, I would have to go back and listen to the initial bombshell. But I think that like, do you think that okay, first of all, let me ask you, do you think that how Prime was talking to her would be appropriate between two people on Twitch generally? Like if I'm trying to run a panel, let's say, and I message you like that, like, do you think that's appropriate?
Okay, well, first, do I think it's appropriate for him to be talking that way if they developed a flirty relationship, or I mean, it can be. I don't think it's necessarily not appropriate. First off, the other thing that you said, there's no evidence of false accusations. Sure, we might not have the smoking gun that directly makes the statement that, hey, we're going to go ahead and co-opt this whole thing to go ahead and tank this nigga. No, we don't have
Yeah.
that. But what I do,
Because if
think-
we had
but-
that,
no,
I
no,
would
but- but it's
1,000%.
fine, but
I
what
would be on your side.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what I do think we have is clear evidence that there was motivation, that they had literal conversations beforehand where they were talking about what would be the aftermath when his career is gone, when we have clear evidence of them lying about their relationship because they're aware of how optically it automatically causes people to question and go, seems like there's some motivation here. So we have all of these other mechanics that very clearly lead towards this idea. We might not get a smoking gun of obvious corroborations or obvious concoction of this story, but what we do have is evidence of lying, which automatically causes any reasonable person to second guess the individuals in question, right?
Okay, sure. Let's say I have a fiance, and let's say fucking I don't know, we broke up, God forbid. I love her, she's great. But let's say we broke up, and then on my stream I didn't want to discuss that. Like, do you think that all of a sudden, like, do you see why they might be the case that they didn't want to, like, they had never disclosed it? Like, I don't know, like, people keep their personal life personal sometimes. Like, I don't know if just necessarily keeping their relationship a secret necessitates that they were making false allegations.
It doesn't necessitate.
Okay.
It does. Wait, hold on. Wait. Let me address
go
that.
ahead, go
It
ahead.
doesn't
Yeah, go ahead.
necessitate that they're making false accusations, but it's when you recognize that this is the elephant in the room that seems like it would be probably tangential motivation, and you choose to lie about that specific thing in order to maintain this position supposedly of neutrality, of just trying to be the valiant guy doing the right thing, when we know that automatically would dissuade some people, or at least cause some people to question your motives in this scenario. When you lie in that case, it's a little bit different.
I didn't really follow there. Sorry. Can you repeat that one more
Okay,
time?
sure. When you lie about things that are literal tangential, that are relevant to the actual case, because obviously to answer the affirmation in this specific sentence or in this specific questioning would cause people to be suspicious of whether or not you have other biases and other motivations in this case. When you recognize that and choose to lie about those things, it very, very strongly harms your credibility.
For sure. Yeah, I won't doubt that. It does.
Right. So that's what happened here.
But again, I would, while I agree with your point there, I think that to jump to say false allegations is a jump that I'm not comfortable making.
Oh, I'm not jumping necessarily to false allegations. What I am jumping to is motivated reasoning on Dylan's part, unfounded accusations on Dylan's part. I'm also I'm also pointing out that Dylan on multiple occasions mentioned canceling people. He literally canceling Prime. He literally spoke about the fallout of Prime being canceled and about needing to absorb all of the people that stopped going to PrimeCayes' channel. So to me, it seems like there's a bunch of motivation here. They literally intentionally withheld portions of the screenshot, which gave better context and greater context in order to accurately portray what was happening. So I think all of this manipulation by the two of them is demonizing.
Okay, so I can agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I could say that, like, if someone felt like their girlfriend was really actually sexually harassed, I could see a lot of the things that Dylan did. No.
Yes, and that's exactly why you would need to disclose that sort of information. Because typically, when we recognize,
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
I
hold on.
agree.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. So
I agree.
typically,
Yeah.
good. I got you. I'm going to make sure it's
Yeah.
voiced here
Okay.
accurately,
Sure.
so we can make sure this point is really solid here. So typically, when you recognize that there are things that are associated with something such that would likely cause some sort of motivated reasoning, it is appropriate to disclose those things. For example, when you have people that are like being sponsored by something and sharing a product, they have to mention that. You can't just say, "Man, I really love this product that you're being paid to do," and not mention this is a paid advertisement, right? That was some of the fallout behind some of the CS:GO gambling or some of the other gambling by some of the other individuals. So in this case, when people are already suspicious of this thing, then it does become a little bit, it becomes incredibly suspicious that you intentionally lied. Not only just withheld, but intentionally lied when directly confronted with the truth of the obvious motivated reasoning within these two situations. I think that's very problematic. And I also want to point out that your strongest appeal in this case for PrimeCayes' guilt is something that is doubly important when it comes to Dylan. Because with PrimeCayes' case, it was literally she had a place to stay, she was living with she was already in a relationship, she was like living her own life, she had been perfectly fine before she got this job, and now he was literally only giving her $250 a month, and we're supposed to say that was supposedly something that was so powerful that it created such an insane power imbalance that it disabled her ability to actually argue or to actually come forward with these claims. Meanwhile, she's now living with Dylan in an even more important situation because he's literally providing the roof over her head. She hasn't even started paying rent yet. They're in an actual relationship. So you have all of these other dynamics. Dylan Burns is significantly larger as a platform than PrimeCayes. So literally every dynamic that would ever be in any shape demonizing of PrimeCayes is doubly demonizing for Dylan Burns, yet you're not speaking about that. It's almost like you want to dismiss that, even though it's significantly higher.
Listen, I'm not dismissing that. I told Dylan that I don't think that this is appropriate. I told you at the very start, I don't think that people in this space should be like speaking or being in this kind of relationships with other streamers. Like I said, that was my first position. No.
Yeah, you said it was so you think that no matter what, like no streamer should be able to like flirt or talk to another streamer, period?
I think that like I think that it opens the door for a lot of weird stuff. Yeah, I would recommend against it.
What is distinct about streaming that would somehow make it worse or open the door to anything more than any other relationship in any other scenario?
Well, for one, everything is in public.
What is the relationship is in public? Clearly not, because had they not admitted it, Colorado, we would have.
Sorry, I mean like no. Sorry, I mean like when fallout happens or things like this is what happens. Like it's just I prefer to treat this as a professional setting. Like that's just my advice, and I would tell the same to Prime. Like
sure, but you're aware that workplace relationships exist, right?
Yeah, and I don't think that they're a good idea. You should try to avoid them at all costs.
You're entitled to your opinion, but you recognize that in this country, that there are plenty of places that allow for workplace relationships.
Of course,
where there isn't an obvious power dynamic, such as a manager and a subordinate, when there's not a direct line of subordination, that they allow for workplace relationships, because obviously it does. Like, yes, while relationships can cause complications in any capacity, people in the same church, people in the same city, people in the same business, so on and so forth. Like, there can always be ramifications for fallout in relationships, but the idea is the main goal, the main motivator, the main driver, right? The militating factor for when we decide on whether or not relationships are appropriate typically tend to be power imbalances, direct significant power imbalances. And in this case, there wasn't any direct significant power imbalance. I'm sorry, with Dylan, I'm sorry, there is an extreme power imbalance. She's literally living with him, and if we are recognizing she's expressed on God knows how many occasions she's wearing these undiagnosed mental illness issues or mental health issues. She's wearing these things as some sort of badge that's literally creating all of these fallouts in these relationships. The idea that she would then get into a relationship with another person who's aware, now that we've seen it in action, that these things are leading to all of these problems, and this person now has an even stronger power dynamic and is still willing to date this person while trying to demonize another problem, it seems incredibly unfair.
Do you think that okay, so I so again, just to clarify, I don't think that it's necessarily a good idea for Dylan and Katarina to be dating. So I'm sympathetic with the things you're saying, but I will say that like some of it also is about how much the other person's into it, right?
Well, that's a whole nother conversation, because it doesn't matter how much a person is into it when it comes to the power imbalances.
I mean, yes, but if in both situations there's a power imbalance, and in one situation the person's down and in the other situation they're not down, you don't see a difference between those two?
Hold on. The difference that I see in those two is not tangential to your point. Your point was that it's inappropriate in any situation for these sort of relationships to exist. So now that I'm pointing out to you that it is equally present in this case, where there's like obviously these issues and there's this clear conflict of interest, which you've been avoiding this entire time. Now you're willing to appeal to, well, no, let's move the goalpost.
Wait, no, sorry.
Now you're moving the
Fanatic,
goalpost to actual interest.
I was originally going to bring up my second point as well, being the interest as well. But yes, I agree with you about the power dynamic thing. But then to take it a step further, because both have a power dynamic in this situation, my next thing would be the consenting part and be the enthusiasm towards it.
Sure. I mean, I guess we can make the very generic statement that yes, it's probably appropriate. I didn't think that this was really questionable. That it's really appropriate to make sure you have consent in your pursuits of relationships, and like the things need to be double-sided.
Yeah, that's it. And then the other thing I was going to say about the 200
was that in the question?
No, I mean, I was saying like that seems to be a difference in these two dynamics here. That in one case, Catarana's interested, and in the other case, she wasn't interested.
So now again, you are definitely moving the goalpost to whether this thing is appropriate now to whether or not she's interested.
No, because both are inappropriate.
Okay, so just to make sure, so you do believe that the relationship with Dylan is inappropriate?
I think that it's not a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like you're very hesitant to just state it as cleanly as you were against
Bro,
Prime, but
I
that's
said
fine.
this was my very first thing I said.
Your first thing that you said, you literally voiced it specifically with regards to her and Prime. You have not been willing. You've not been willing.
Go back and listen, bro. I said no one in this space should be talking with other people in the manner that Prime was. Yeah.
Right. And now you're not willing. It seems like you're very reluctant, or you're very soft in your delivery when it comes towards approaching the same opinion towards Dylan. But I got it, because you guys have a working relationship.
Wait, have I been vague or have I been ultra clear?
When I'm trying to ask you to say very simple things, almost with the exact same almost verbatim to what you said about Prime towards Dylan, especially when these things are a lot more amplified, you're almost unwilling to do so. You'll always try to find a more charitable way or a more passive way of saying this.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to push back a little bit on was the 200.
Wait, no, don't just say okay. So can I get you to clearly say that this relationship with Dylan Burns, as far as power dynamics and as far as your original opinion, is far worse, right?
Far worse? I don't know. I don't know how to measure that.
Do you think that there is an amplification in the power dynamics which would have made it inappropriate with Prime?
So which amplification to which side? Sorry.
One, Dylan Burns is a bigger streamer. Two, she literally lives with Dylan Burns.
I mean, wait 1 sec. Let's go one at a time. So the bigger streamer thing, Dylan is a bigger streamer than
by a lot.
Than Prime, but Kat has also grown as a streamer since the Prime days.
Do you think that the relative differences in size is shorter somehow in Dylan Burns?
We'd have to do them. We'd have to do by the raw numbers, no, but we'd have to look at the percentage of growth and shit.
Yeah, obviously we'd be talking about percentages, and it's not.
Yeah. You've done the math?
Dylan literally, okay, I don't have to do them. Yes, intuitively, the math is so painfully obvious. I didn't think I needed to actually calculate it.
Walk me through it.
She hasn't grown that dramatically in size as a streamer. Not even close.
I mean, like
she gets like around
her. I'd have to look.
She's literally getting around 20 viewers now on her stream, if that.
Okay, but do you?
Whereas before she was getting 10. We know that, and we know that Dylan Burns is more than 2 times the size of PrimeCayes.
Do you recognize that going from 10 to 20 viewers is like it's tough to do and shit? Like when you're a beginning streamer.
So now we're going past the point of whether or not there's been a relative change such that Dylan Burns' difference is significantly higher, such that the power dynamics. Now you just want to have a vacuous conversation about the difficulty of streaming. That's not what was happening here. We were establishing the fact, right, that you're trying to run away from, that the power dynamics in this Dylan Burns situation is significantly higher than Prime and her. In the Dylan Burns situation, it literally has to do with where she's living. This is literally like her life sustenance. The literal largest expense almost everyone has is the room and board over their head. Sure. And you add to that in a compound manner the fact that he is a significantly larger streamer, that he has a much broader pool. Literally,
Okay.
I want to say close to 10 times that of PrimeCayes. So when we know
Wait,
that,
wait, Dylan is 10 times PrimeCayes?
I would say close to it, but we don't have to get hung up on the specific numbers, because I get you want to do it feels to me like you really want to get bogged down on literally every detail instead of just instead of just coming to the obvious conclusion that the power dynamic here, if we were to eliminate all other things, if we were to assume PrimeCayes was equal, which we know they're not even close, if we were to assume that her stream size was about the same size, which was significantly larger, which we know it really pretty much is. I mean, it pretty much is not. If we were to assume all those things, what's the point of it? Good.
Yeah, what's the point?
So if you're willing
I just want to know what the point is.
I got you. So when we know that, for you to continue to deny or to push back every time I try to get you to commit to the obvious, intuitive point that the power dynamics in this Dylan Burns and Katarana relationship are significantly worse than the PrimeCayes one, shows your bias, that same bias that
Did
I feel
deny a bias?
Right, so okay, good. So as long as you're willing to admit that you're biased, I just want it to be crystal
I said
clear.
that at the start of the call.
Okay, I didn't feel like you did. Okay, good. I'm sorry. Then maybe that's my fault. So good. So you are very biased, and that's why you're unwilling to state very plainly that Dylan Burns here in this situation, according to the principle that you were originally introducing for why this power dynamic was unreasonable, you're willing to admit now that this Dylan Burns thing is significantly worse, but your bias is preventing you from saying so?
I mean, I'm agreeing with you that both have a power dynamic at play. Both are inappropriate relationships. You can say one is worse than the other, and
So
I don't see.
I'm
I'm wondering what relevance that plays. I guess. Let's say I agree with you. Like, what next? I guess. What's next?
It's just really interesting. Okay, listen, all that for me, I think one of my major things here in this scenario is to actually point out that what I feel like this community is doing is incredibly harmful. I think it's really insane to me, and I'm glad that at least you're being honest enough to admit it, that the bias here that you're displaying is, I think, disgusting. I think it's really sad that we could literally sit here and try to tank a person's career, and you can see someone trying to tank a person's career based off of a principle that you're willing to voice, and then kind of throttle back when it's coming to pointing out that principle that you're holding on to is so much worse over here. I think that's really egregious. But yeah, we can get into the, I mean, now that you've admitted that, we can just kind of move on. There was a bunch of things that Dylan Burns said that I think were very indicative that his entire goal here was to cancel Prime. Are you willing to admit that? Do you believe that Dylan Burns was trying to actively cancel Prime?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's where a big part of this problem comes, because there is an obvious motivation here when it came to Dylan's doing this. So then that means now it does seem a little bit more malicious when you have a person trying to cancel a person without sufficient evidence, and we see that there's obviously like a competitive nature in these two things. I think that's a little bit problematic. And I don't know.
So
to me, the fact that you could stand behind that and like kind of like just passively like, yeah, it's a thing and whatever, and ignore that. I don't know, man. I think that's questionable character on your part.
Because I genuinely think, okay, and this could because we'll never be actually able to know, but we might have to just agree to disagree. I genuinely think that Dylan is a smart enough guy that he wouldn't come out with an accusation to try to cancel Prime if he genuinely didn't think that he had the sufficient evidence to form this to form what he thinks happened.
Okay.
Like, he's not going to commit career suicide to make himself look like an asshole like this on purpose. He obviously, in his head, he thought he had what he needed to make his point.
Okay, so if we're going to play the Dylan Burns' intelligent route, so then he should have thought that he obviously had the evidence in order to do what he was doing. Do you believe that he had the evidence that was necessary for a cancellation of Prime?
No.
Okay. So where is the disconnect here? Because you're saying Dylan Burns is smart enough to not come forward unless he believed that.
Listen,
wait, let me finish. Let me finish the framing.
Go ahead.
You're saying Dylan Burns is smart enough that he would not want to come forward with an accusation unless he has the evidence necessary to get the result that he was going for. And here I am asking you, do you think he had the evidence necessary to get the result that he was going for? And you're saying no. So are you smarter than Dylan, or was there just some bias there? Or what was happening?
I mean,
we
have the benefit of armchair quarterbacking it in retrospect, and like seeing what Prime's response was, seeing the payment situation, seeing all of this.
He had access. some of the information that he had access to, he didn't show us, right? Like, you understand that he had significantly more insight. You understand that they had plenty of conversations in which they were literally planning this before they decided to go live. They literally considered the options before doing so, right? So it wasn't like this was just a spur of the moment, she told me and I just came forward with it. They had already had previous conversation, as referenced by the fact that in the stream that he did, Samantha Banana, he had several conversations with her where he was making the statements. Well, we already talked about this before. Do you want to share that now with Katarana? Yeah, remember when we had talked about whatever? Here, I'm going to read a quote directly from Katarana regarding that stream, in which she's literally pointing out that they definitely had a plan for this, and that they had been, this is not something that just happened like spur of the moment, right? And she said, I think that was also this directly after Dylan says, yeah, we should make a refugee program for crimes community. He says, yeah, I gotta say, Prime actually collapsed faster than the Afghanistan movement.
Sorry, I actually haven't seen any of these DMs you're referring to right
This
now.
isn't a DM. These are literal quotes from his stream that I just wrote down verbatim.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Sorry, go ahead.
So he says, yeah, I gotta say, Prime actually collapsed faster than the Afghanistan government. So if there's any refugee program we need on top of taking Afghan refugees, it's taking Prime's community refugees. So we will start a program and welcome any of them into CAT or my community 100%. Katarana responds, I think that was also really a really major thing that made me really hesitant to say anything, because when I start saying what I was saying to Dylan yesterday is that what do I do now? What are we going to do? Like, there's no longer any platform for people that are smaller to come on to. If they want to start doing political conversation, because what is there? There's Hans. You already need to be established to get on the Hans. You need to be large to get onto yours. What's going to have to happen now? I guess one of the things Dylan said to help me not feel nervous about it was, it is better that they have nowhere to go, or they have somewhere to go. Is it better that they have nowhere to go, or they have somewhere to go, but there's a chance that they'll go and get harassed when they go on? So this was very clearly premeditated, them going on. They they believed what the fallout was going to be, was this man being canceled. So, like, this isn't like some spur of the moment thing. I don't like the idea that it almost seems like we're trying to frame this as if, like, no, he didn't really think about it. He felt like I think it's kind of ridiculous.
I never said he didn't think about it.
So he did. He was well aware that. So
he thought that he had enough evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
what would make him think that? What would make him think that, considering the evidence that he presented and how obviously you can see that it clearly wasn't enough evidence? Well, without PrimeCayes' response, just the evidence that he had was clearly not enough to go for the claims that he was making, such as sex pest or sexual predator, or all of the things, or making the association between him and Andrew Cuomo. He literally made the statement. I'm sorry. Immediately after that, Dylan responded to her, "Hey, Destiny had the lefty purge. I'm gonna have the sex pest purge." He blocked PrimeCayes, calling him a sex pest. So, like, yeah, these are really bold claims coming from a man that had all of this inside information, and he literally and we obviously see how spurious the evidence was. Correct?
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, there's this, I can see that Dylan in his mind thinks, okay, Katarana's been harassed because that's my girlfriend. I believe her if she says that. And I don't know. He said that he's heard some of the conversation, or one of the conversation. I don't know. Okay, like, he said that he's seen some things that he doesn't.
I remember what he said. He just said he heard a conversation in which he called her pretty or gorgeous.
Okay. So there's obviously in his mind.
You think that's enough to validate that we need to tank this man's career?
Probably not. No.
Okay, so that's the only additional thing that he had.
It's the entirety, right? Like, if in his mind he's thinking, okay, there is enough there, then he thought that he was gonna fucking be able to present the evidence. Like, I don't. What do you want me to say? I'm not sure what you were looking for me to say here.
Well, I'm looking for you to admit that it sounds insane of me. Like, for you to be making a statement that Dylan Burns is so smart that he wouldn't do something crazy, but then you're also
not so smart.
You literally said the word. He's so intelligent. You said he's too.
Let me be very clear.
Okay, if you want to correct it.
Yeah, he's smart enough to not fucking make himself look bad. But maybe he wasn't able to figure out that, I need to have actually no more evidence. Like for sure, like, this is not enough.
Okay.
Like, why can't both of those things happen?
What you originally
he's not
said,
an idiot
no,
who's gonna come out.
That's not what you said.
Wait, can I finish, please?
Okay.
He's not gonna come out knowing he doesn't have enough evidence to try and pull this off.
Okay, so that's not what you said. You said he's too intelligent to come forward with an accusation like this without having evidence. We now see
Without him thinking he has enough evidence.
you said without having evidence, or
What-
sure, without him thinking that he has enough evidence. Well,
Yeah.
Well, so if he thinks that he has enough evidence, but we can clearly see that he didn't have enough evidence, then that sounds like he's not too smart to do something that ridiculous. No person would come forward with an accusation not thinking that they had enough evidence. Like clearly, when you try
Okay,
something,
yeah,
like
exactly.
a prosecutor going to say like that's so vacuous of a statement.
No, it's not. I'm trying to say that obviously he thought he had enough evidence. Like
Okay.
that's why he came forward with it.
Obviously, I don't know why that needed
Yeah.
to be stated, but the problem comes when
Because
you
wait,
can make
one
this
second. The reason I'm saying that is because when you're saying that he's coming out here with false allegations and stuff, it kind of suggests that like he knew, like that he thought, okay, I don't have, or like originally before when we were talking
I use the word
about people getting
unfounded,
canceled
unfounded accusations.
or insufficient, I guess, or whatever,
Mhm.
that like you're suggesting that Dylan knew he had insufficient evidence and still came forward with it. I'm saying
Sure.
there could be a scenario where Dylan thought he had sufficient evidence, though now we know that he didn't.
Okay, so I guess maybe this is where it comes down, because you're willing to say, no, he was just too dumb to recognize that he didn't have enough evidence, where I'm saying, no, he was just malicious, and he saw the prize here in canceling and tanking this man's career, and that was enough for him to go ahead and move forward with these false accusations. And the craziest thing right now is that there's going to be no negative fallout for this man who literally tried to tank a person's career, working behind the scenes surreptitiously with his what we now know girlfriend, to try to tank a man's career who was her previous boss.
Can you let's say that you're, I don't know. Okay, let's say he actually thought, okay, Katarina was sexually harassed and he doesn't know if others are being behind the scenes. Do you think that it's unexplainable as to why he would try to come forward like this and try to damage, let's say, Prime's career?
Listen. I don't. Do I think it's unreasonable? Sure, I would think it's unreasonable because you would probably
Wait, you
yes, I
you
would
think it is unreasonable?
I was answering the question, wasn't
Okay.
I?
Go ahead.
Sure, I think it's unreasonable because I would think you would probably need to gather information such that you would be able to come to a conclusion that this actually happened. To move before you actually have acquired the evidence seems pretty unreasonable to me. To move with insufficient evidence seems pretty unreasonable to me. Now, whether or not a person is aware, if a person is incorrectly comes to the assumption that this is enough, but it obviously isn't, then it's either their stupidity or they were so motivated by the eye and the prize that they went ahead and moved forward. And that's what happened.
Or you know,
here.
it could also be that he cares so much about Katarina that he didn't do his due diligence. Maybe
that would be the prize that he would be motivated by.
Well, no, the prize that you were suggesting was to tank
Any
Prime's
prize.
career and take his viewers.
Sure, I think that too.
Well, like, okay, so I'm saying is like,
you understand that both that the prize of whether or not he was like supporting his girlfriend, that like that's just no matter what, whether he has evidence or not, him going forward, that's already done. He already earned that prize. But the other prize that he had been eyeing as spoken as extracted from his speech. The other prize was obviously the cancellation of Prime and the absorbing of all of Prime's community.
okay.
Yeah, so it does seem like he was proper. So again, either he was motivated by this.
Wait, sorry. Can I okay. So just let's say that to put the second prize away for a second, okay? Just for 1 second. Can the first prize alone not be enough motivation for him to have missed the mark here?
Maybe.
Like let's say for example, Prime wasn't a political creator. He was a esports gamer.
Sure, I don't really like the idea of ignoring the obvious prize that literally can be easily extrapolated from his speech that he literally spoke. I mean, that was on his actual stream. So, like, for you, I guess maybe you want to just play, like, I guess kind of the mental game of, like, let's just assume that the other prize that he clearly, like that was, like, belied by his speech, like, let's just assume that doesn't exist. Why are we going down this logical train, or just an illogical train, when he literally voiced, through numerous occasions, the intention of canceling the guy, and we have the smoking gun, and him literally voicing about absorbing him, absorbing his viewers, and they had private conversations. He voiced it on his stream, and Katarina confirmed that they both voiced the idea of him not having a stream anymore and what to do with his viewers.
Do you think that okay, let me ask you a question. Do you think
Keep moving to the next part. Go
Dylan
ahead.
needed to do this to Prime?
It's not a matter of need. Do you think that Microsoft needed necessarily to completely like do some of the antitrust things that they do? Probably not. Do you think Walmart needs, considering the amount of wealth that that company generates, to not pay its people a living wage? No. Do you think Wells Fargo, one of the wealthiest
I mean,
banks in
yeah,
the world, do they need necessarily? Do they need to add in all of those extra checking accounts on the people without their knowledge until they got sued by our
I
government?
mean, yeah, it's
Not
for their bottom
necessarily.
line. Yeah, of course.
No,
It's for their
that's
bottom line.
these aren't needs. These are wants. The expansion that they got there, they still
Well,
were.
they need to have growth quarter over quarter.
Do you think that they were 100% unable to get growth unless they did that evil thing that they did there? Do you think that? Do you think? So
I don't know.
It sounds
I
to
don't
me,
know.
considering this is one of the oldest banks in our country, that they probably were growing regardless, but they probably did this thing because they figured they could get away with it and it would speed up their growth. The thing is, ultimately, we don't trying to make this ridiculous right now. It's insane to me how far you're going to defend Dylan Burns. Crazy, but I guess now that you've already voiced that you're biased, it makes all the sense in the world. The idea that he needed primes, not necessarily. Yes, he can continue to grow without it, but these things help.
Yeah.
And clearly this is something, and clearly it seemed like his eye was on the prize of gaining that growth through the destruction of Prime's career, which I find to be particularly heinous.
But I guess why would he do that when he has so many other
For better
avenues of
growth.
growth?
To improve his growth.
Wait, wait, sorry, one sec. So he doesn't
Please
stream
don't
at the
make this
same
point.
he doesn't stream at the same time as Prime.
So do you
And he
understand?
also has connections to much bigger content creators that he gets on his panels. Why would he do this hack job thing? Like,
I hope
yeah.
you don't. I hope you don't really think that this is a good point. You're basically saying, well, he can grow other ways, so why would he do that?
Yeah, like,
do you think that's a tenable position? Do you think that most people don't have multiple options, even the people that do other things? Like,
I mean, listen, to go to wait, one
Bill
sec,
Cosby's one of the wealthiest men in the
let me
world. Why would
answer,
he need to
let me
rape
answer,
people?
let me
That's so
answer, let me
silly. This is
answer.
not a good point,
Let me
bro.
answer. Let me answer.
Come
Let me
on.
answer. Because I think that in order for someone to pull down into the unethical zone, I think most people are generally ethical. So if you're going to claim that someone went to the unethical zone, which this what you're claiming would be unethical, then I would have to see like, okay, no, he was desperate that he went to the unethical route.
Wait, no, you don't have to necessarily prove desperation. Can you prove to me? No, I'm not going down this argument. I'm not. I'm sorry. I don't believe that you for a second believe that desperation is a prerequisite necessary in order for people to do something criminal. I don't think Bill Cosby was desperate.
Wait, I didn't say criminal. I said
I'm sorry.
unethical.
I'm sorry to do something unethical. I don't think Bill Cosby was desperate for pussy, but you probably still believe he was out there, you know what I'm saying, doing something untoward. I don't think Harvey Weinstein was necessarily desperate, a man of that amount of power. I don't think that that's necessary. So the idea that you need desperation in order to motivate someone to do something unethical is absolutely spurious, and I know that you're aware of that. Please, this is crazy to me. Your bias is showing. You're trying so very hard to defend this guy when we have obviously all of this evidence.
I mean,
come on.
Wait, one sec. So I just find it weird because Dylan's growth trajectory was very fucking impressive in the last few months. That's why I find it weird. Like that why would he do this? Like,
okay.
I guess I just don't understand why he would do it.
Ted, let me ask you this. The views that he's gotten, the amount of conversations that's been being had about Dylan, do you think had it not been for these accusations that this level of conversation happening about him, that level, the size of his stream yesterday, do you think that would have been achieved without this PrimeCayes conversation?
Well, that doesn't hinge on the cancellation of PrimeCayes and taking his viewers.
Okay. So listen, look, I get it. If you want to die on the hill of, listen, him canceling PrimeCayes and absorbing all those viewers wasn't 100% necessary for him to continue to grow. Wait, hold on. You're making the argument that him canceling Prime and nuking his career with these accusations, which were unfounded, was not 100% necessary in order for PrimeCayes, in order for him to continue to grow. Therefore, that means that therefore that's evidence that he didn't do this.
Of course it's not evidence that he didn't do it. How am I supposed to have evidence of him not doing something?
Well, so then all I'm saying is this seems like this is an obvious motivation, but you're trying to argue that it wouldn't be a motivation.
No, I'm saying it's a possible motivation. I just don't
Okay.
think that it's the most likely situation.
Okay, and you're saying it's the only thing that you have to say that the reason why you're saying it's not likely is because he could have grown elsewhere, or he had other
No,
means
I'm
of
saying
growing?
no. There's multiple. There's the fact that he was already growing tremendously. There's the fact that he has incredible connections in this industry, if you want to call it that. There's the fact that he's already been growing like a crazy. All of these things I think lead to that.
Okay.
To the fact that like him trying to tank Prime's channel is a thing that could happen, but I don't think it's for growth. It could be that he wanted to tank Prime's channel because he really thought that he was a sex pest, let's say.
Sure. I mean, anything is possible, but I just don't think that
Yeah.
obviously there's evidence enough to suggest that he was a sex pest, clearly, number one. And then number two, I think obviously given the motivation, him literally already talking about absorbing the niggas viewers into his thing, I think if you want to just go ahead and make this appeal to ignorance like you're doing, I think that's fine, but I think it looks like to anyone watching
Do you
this,
like
I
do
think
you
to,
think
I
wait,
think
one
to
second.
anyone I think to anyone watching this, I think it's very obvious that your bias is absolutely over the top. This is crazy.
Do you think that if Dylan's plan was this Machiavellian plan to absorb
It's not that Machiavellian. It's not.
I mean, you're making it sound like there's an entire conspiracy to do this.
Doesn't sound like a really huge conspiracy, and it's not there's not even a necessary huge conspiracy.
There's all this behind the scenes.
There is not a necessary huge conspiracy. It's really simple. Someone comes forward with an accusation.
Okay, let's say it's not
let me
a
explain.
huge...
Let me explain.
Can I didn't get to finish my point.
Okay, then go ahead. You keep saying these things
Okay.
that are just accurate, that are not accurate. Like
Let's say
you
that
literally
there
made the
was-
statement that I said it was a Machiavellian thing, and clearly
Let's
it's
say
not
no, I didn't
necessary.
say you said that, bro. I never said that.
Okay.
I said let's say that there was.
Okay.
Let's say. I said let's
Why?
say that there was. I said let's say that there was some Machiavellian plan to take over Prime's viewers. Do you think that Dylan would admit it in the open air like that, or do you think that maybe there's a chance that he just made a shitty joke? Why would he reveal his motivations like that?
It seems to me like it wasn't just a single joke. I have all of these different examples of where he was clearly
Were they in tongue in cheek?
No, the one with Katarana was not tongue-in-cheek at all. She literally said she was hesitant to come forward because she was afraid that whatever, and her and Dylan were discussing that because she was afraid that those other people wouldn't have anywhere to go, in which he responded, well, it's better they don't have anywhere to go than it is for them to go somewhere and be harassed and all of that. We obviously
Wait, that has nothing to do with Dylan wanting to grow. That could be him trying to cancel someone for being a sex pest.
Yeah, sure, it could be. But again, once you make the statement, the direct statement, hey, like we're gonna have to, we're gonna absorb, like the man collapsed faster. Literally, when he's making statements, saying things like, when he comes back to Twitch in his conversation with Destiny, when he made, we can just read through them. One, he started off by calling him a sex pest in his text message with Prime. The next one, he's literally using the word cancel. He's like, yeah, I've been told by other people that they are canceling because they saw this, the accusation that he presented, and didn't want to associate with him anymore. So he'd already so he had that. Then he said, personally, while I believe in rehabilitative justice, it's hard for me to believe that there is this much of a change of heart in 12 hours after he started a war room and had to go to war with the person he was sexually harassing. I find that very hard to believe. I don't think I'm that gullible. Then none
of what you just said suggests that he did it to tank Prime's viewership for his own growth.
Sure.
All of this could be addressed by him thinking that Prime is a genuine sex pest.
All I need to do is very clearly demonstrate to you that he very clearly wanted to tank Prime, and all we need is the very obvious smoking gun of him making the statement, we'll be absorbing all of his viewers. That's all I need. So very clearly, he worked extremely, it didn't have to be extremely hard. Very clearly, he had a very clear stated goal of canceling this man, and then after having that very clear goal of canceling this man, he also let it slip that he very clearly wanted to absorb his viewers. So you can now, so it's one thing, it's really crazy to me because if he didn't make that statement, you'd be saying, well, you don't have any proof, you don't have any evidence that he was trying to do this. Now that we have literal direct evidence, the smoking gun out of his mouth verbatim, now it's like, I think that's too tongue-in-cheek. You can't prove that he wanted to do it. So his words aren't enough? Come on,
So your position, just to clarify, is that if he is trying to tank Prime to take his viewers, that he would come out and just say it in the open.
I think he did do that for sure. He literally did speak it out in the open.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess like I think that's weird as fuck to think. Like I think that it was I don't disagree with you that he was trying to cancel Prime. And but I think that that can be explained by him thinking that he's a sex pest and not motivated by his own stream, especially when they don't stream at the same time, especially when he's already been growing astronomically. I guess I just don't see it.
Oh, sure. And I mean, I don't know. Listen, there's more stuff to come out. I remember I spoke to a person that was really close to the situation that literally told me that they probably were being played by Dylan, and that the intention originally when going onto the stream was supposed to be something entirely different than it was. So
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
So it's pretty obvious. I think literally he made several statements about like how they had been planning it and how they had been speaking about it. So this was not something that just happened like just on the fly. Clearly, he was premeditated. He knew this, so he had time to think and examine the evidence as it would come. He made all of these references over
all
and
of
over.
Everything you're saying.
He made he made all of these statements over and over and over again about how much the preponderance of evidence and how many witnesses and how this is a pattern of behavior and how this man needs to be canceled.
Bro, everything
everything we said. So hold on. So all I'm saying is very clearly demonstrating that he had a very clear goal. The most obvious. Right. So
the motivation is the question.
The most obvious clear goal here, which I think can be firmly established, is that he wanted Prime canceled. And then I think now that you juxtapose that next to an actual declaration out of his own mouth that, hey, we're probably going to have to find some way of absorbing his viewers, I think those two are enough. And I think anyone trying to move it further, like, do we need more evidence than that? It's crazy.
Okay. I guess we'll have to agree to disagree, because I see all of the evidence, like all of the conjecture could point to the fact that he actually thought Prime was a sex pest. Did he plan it behind the scenes? Yeah. Did he try to gather evidence? Yeah. Did he try to cancel Prime? Yeah. Like all of these could be explained by him actually thinking Prime is a sex pest. That's basically, like, listen, I don't know you very well, Fanatiq, but I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I did the same with Maddie. I did the same with Prime, and I do the same with Dylan, right? I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and try to be in good faith. So I that's just my view on it. If you want to say he maliciously did it to gain viewership, that's your prerogative. Sure. I just think that there's enough explanations on the other side to kind of make it less obvious. I guess.
It's just speculation. I'm literally going off of actual evidence of things that he actually said. And the thing is, I also like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think the problem is that I start doubting the benefit once I start seeing direct lies that need to be confronted by direct evidence. So one of such lies is when you directly lie and say, no, I'm not dating her. We're not in a relationship. And then later on, once someone has proof, you go, well, yeah, we are dating. Okay. That right there makes me start to doubt the benefit. Then also, when you sit here and you start making things about the possible gains that you can gain when a person actually goes there, that automatically makes me start doubting the benefit. Then when I get access to the evidence that you have access to, and I recognize how spurious your claims are, while supposedly you're supposed to be pretty intelligent, now that's three things that when you start juxtaposing and when you line up everything, it's like, I don't know, man. You're going really hard in the paint for such a lack of evidence. I don't know. You're definitely going on like literally itching every time you can get an opportunity to be like, he voiced before anyone else could was there suspicion on whether or not he was the person. I guess I can go over a stream afterwards. But literally, I think you another thing to add into the picture, when he's literally smiling the whole time while we're talking about someone who's literally being supposedly, he never used the word abuse, but then he talked about like Andrew Cuomo and made all these comparisons, comparing his stream to a Nazi. So when you have all of these things together, you're dating a girl and you're saying how much of a victim she is and how inappropriate he was, but you're laughing the entire time. You're literally lying to us about some of the things. You're literally concocting evidence that doesn't actually exist. You're fighting it tooth and freaking nail. You literally are talking about the benefits of him being gone that are personally relevant to you. All of that together seems really obvious to me, but I can get it. You're so biased because you got a new show. You got your podcast that's going to be coming up with him. I don't know when it airs, but you're going to be doing that. You end up missing out on a week because he's getting so much more powerful, right? Through these claims, and it doesn't seem like there's
It's not
it doesn't-
powerful. It's
well,
literally
well,
the
sure. When
destiny
your
things
viewership
overlap.
when your viewership goes from 2,000 to 4,000, it seems like you're getting a little bit more powerful. Obviously, because that's normally the
No,
chief.
I'm just
That's
saying
the chief
the-
power goal.
one
So
second, I'm
hold on,
just saying
no, please don't interrupt me in the middle of this
Okay.
grander point that I'm making with something so tangential,
ahead,
which is
go ahead.
actually factually accurate. Please stop.
go ahead.
So when you're getting more powerful, as he obviously did, and now you stand to benefit because if you continue your podcast with them, which takes place at the same time as this same drama took place this week, that was clearly like a doubling of his viewership, then you stand to gain something. So that's your motivation for why you had no problem sacrificing this black man, or I'm sorry, you have no problem, or you have a problem holding a person accountable for trying to sacrifice this black man on this platform with these very spurious claims. That's where the issue is.
No, the issue is that. So I some of what you said I can sympathize with. The only thing is I just like to go by what the evidence is that's available. Was
Okay.
the evidence enough if sufficient to cancel Prime? I already admitted on the night of that probably not.
But you have no problem
Was-
being with the guy that was definitely trying to do it with this insufficient evidence.
Sorry, say the first part again.
You
I-
have no
I
problem
missed-
working with this man who was trying to cancel him, even with this insufficient evidence.
Yes, because I think that he thought he had enough evidence.
Sure, you can continue to do that.
Yeah, that's all. Like, yeah.
All right. Well, are there any other crazy things that you feel like need to be discussed here? I mean, I feel so now at this point when we have the smoking gun of you admitting that you're biased and that's why you're being so unfair and uncharitable in this situation. Are you going to say that was just tongue in cheek?
Sorry, how am I being unfair and uncharitable?
You literally already admitted that you were really biased, and when I pointed it out to you, and I gave
Wait,
you the...
I'm biased, but I'm not unfair.
Okay, so are you going to say that was tongue in cheek?
Which was what tongue in cheek?
The statement when you were making a statement that you were biased.
No, I am biased towards Dylan. I like him and I worked with him. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I still think that I maintain a pretty level understand.
biased.
No, a pretty level-headed understanding of the facts that are available to us, which is
Level-headed
why
but
I never once said that Prime should be canceled. I just said that his behavior was inappropriate.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, I appreciate you having a conversation. Sorry I got heated. I think I have a personal investment in the situation. It's not just PrimeCayes. I don't really even interact with PrimeCayes that much. I haven't been on this panel in quite some time. I don't really stand to gain anything at all from this scenario. But to me, I do think there is a pattern of behavior when it comes to the cancelization of black men over things that are sometimes spurious. And I think that's something that I have a problem with. And I think the idea that he was trying to do this, I think is pretty bad.
So you think that if Prime was not black, that things would have gone down differently?
I don't know. I can't be sure.
Okay. Well, I guess I can't say either way either. In general, I think, I guess let me give a closing statement. I don't think Prime should be canceled based on the evidence that's provided to us. And I think that, but I still do think that, like, the way that he's speaking to people who I consider colleagues, even if they're not on the payroll at the time, these are still people you're working with. And I think that you should just avoid crossing that boundary. And I think that Dylan and Kat probably felt like they had a case to be made, and that's why they brought it forward. Now we know in retrospect that the case didn't have enough evidence that they presented, but I think that it could have been like an emotional thing where they were like, Dylan might have heard his girlfriend crying over something. I don't know. It could be any number of emotional investments that could cause someone to have a jaded view of the evidence that they have at hand. And I think that's probably what happened. But we'll never really know. Honestly, we can't get in their heads, and we don't have the behind the scenes DMs if they did coordinate it. I will say though, if there was ever evidence that showed that they were purposely coordinating a false allegation, then that is like cancelable for me. Okay.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
man. Well, thanks for having this conversation. If you have anything that you feel like is not stated, you know how we all do. When the conversation's over, I wish I had said. I'm here. I'm always willing to have the conversation. It can be on or off street, and you make the choice.
No, all good, bro. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for reaching. Listen, I like talking with people about anything. If I disagree or whatever, I don't claim to be perfect or anything like that. I just think that I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, which is what I did to Prime, which is what I'm doing to Kat, and which is what I'm doing to Dylan, and even Maddie Cakes. over this recent drama.
I
So
don't know anything about
yeah,
her drama. I stay out of like 99% of it.
it's like related to this drama, but
Jeez.
yeah, you obviously missed out on the second episode of the third, fourth episode of this drama.
Wait, don't. Did
But yeah,
Dylan Burns
dude. All
stream
right.
it?
Sorry.
Did Dylan Burns stream it?
No, it was actually just on Twitter.
okay.
Between Destiny and Maddie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Destiny.
Yeah,
Boy, he gonna handle
it's
himself.
it's a hectic one. All right.
Alrighty,
Any last words, or are we good?
No, we're good, man.
All right, bro. Have a good one, and yeah, take care. We'll talk soon.
Alrighty, peace out.
All right, peace.
At any point in time, is there any log anywhere between them talking where she says explicitly, hey, I don't appreciate this, like, I don't want to talk in this manner anymore? Do you have a single log or conversation of any of that ever happening ever?
No.
This game